I was hearing all of these statistics, which are real, right? Like the research shows that it's going to take 132 years to close the pay gap, right? We see all the stats that show that women are not in the highest levels of leadership and that we do not have gender equity in the workplace. And we know that there's a confidence gap, a leadership gap, and all of these things, right? But that wasn't true for me.
Welcome to Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. I'm your host, Dr. Cynthia. With over 30 years in the corporate world as a single mom, cancer survivor, and often the only woman in the C-suite, I understand the balancing act high-achieving women face. Now an executive coach and international speaker, my mission is to embolden every woman in the C-suite or on the rise to claim her agency and challenge the norms holding her back. Tailored for ambitious professional women, this show features candid conversations with powerful business leaders sharing their real stories of success and failure. If you're ready to look up and step up, you're in the right place. Join us and invest in your future today. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. I am your host and your coach, Dr. Cynthia. If you have ever felt like you had more to offer, more to give, more to do, and yet the circumstances around you were not allowing you to fully realize your huge, amazing, beautiful potential, this episode is for you. Today, I am joined by my guest, Erica Anderson Rooney. She is a C-suite executive and former Chief People Officer. We have that in common. With 15 years of experience shaping cultures and leadership strategy, she is also the best-selling author of her book, Glass Ceilings and Sticky Floors, which I have a copy of in my hands and read over the weekend. It's focused on dismantling the beliefs, those limiting beliefs and toxic workplace environments. She's the founder of Her Collective, which is a digital community helping women just like you advance with confidence and authenticity. She's the host of a top-rated Glass Ceilings and Sticky Floor podcast and a nationally recognized speaker and thought leader and one of my newest friends. Welcome to the show, Erica.
Yay! Cynthia, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun. And we have so much in common. And our thought leadership really just gels so beautifully. Maybe we'll get a chance to talk about how important it is to support other women, right? But
Amen.
let's start with your origin story. What was it? When was the moment that you went, aha, this is what's been going on and I've named it and now I'm going to write a book about it.
Oh, you know, I feel like these moments are all still happening to me, too, at the same
100%.
time.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I had started my podcast originally and started gathering all of these stories. And what I love about working with you, and as you know, my podcast original name was From Now to Next, which is very similar to your book title, Now Near Next.
Right.
And I was like, okay, we're totally vibing on the same wavelength. But I had gathered all of these stories from all of these incredibly successful, amazing women on my podcast. And I had just kind of noticed that all of these stories that I call sticky floor stories were going into these different buckets. So, like an imposter syndrome bucket, perfectionism bucket, fear bucket, burnout bucket. And it was like I'm hearing these same themes on repeat. And I was recognizing myself, Cynthia, in so many of the stories. And I was having so many relatable moments in these stories. And at the same time, I had gone to a boot camp for speakers where I ran into someone who is just a woman that I completely look up to. Her name is Cassandra Worthy, and
Yeah.
she wrote the book Change Enthusiasm. And she had said to me, Erica, have you ever thought about writing a book? And of course, I'm like, absolutely not. I am no author. Like, I'm a chief people officer. Okay. I got a 40-hour a week job that's really 60 hours a week.
Right.
What do you mean, write a book? But that little seed had been planted. And the more conversations I kept having with my podcast, the more that idea and that little seedling kind of grew. And I was like, you know what? like, I should just do this. I should just write this book. So I started getting up at like 3 or 4 in the morning because I also had 2 small kids, this crazy job, and I would just write. And before I knew it, I had an entire book on my hands, and it was at that moment where I was like, "This has got to get out in the world. I've got to get this published because I know I didn't just do all this for
Right.
nothing."
Right,
And
right.
that's where the book came from.
Oh my gosh. Well, Cassandra, props to her. She's amazing. I have not personally met her, but I follow her and love her thought leadership and
Yes.
energy and enthusiasm. I mean, she is a force. So
Yes.
good for her for getting you started.
Planting the
And you're right.
seed.
It's conversations where you start to hear those themes over and over and over again, but then you took the opportunity to really name them. I love this notion of sticky floors as a concept, because as I was reading the book, I'm like, "Oh, that's a sticky floor." So give some examples. You gave some, but give some examples of things that maybe that surprised you that were sticky floors.
Yeah, I think one of them that I include in the book, which you never see it in other leadership books or cultural books, but it talks about alcohol and addiction.
Mm,
And I share in the book how, as a chief people officer and a mom and a woman with all of the stressors on me, I turned to wine as a crutch, right? And then that became something I was dependent on. And it became just the only way that I could relax at the end of the night.
mm,
And that was it was just holding me back in ways I never realized because alcohol is so ingrained into our culture, especially in the workplace culture. Like, let's grab drinks after work. Let's have a happy hour. Let's make sure we're having this dinner with all the wine on tap. And, I really leaned into those
yeah,
opportunities. And I didn't realize, until it was just unbearable for me that I was like, "You know what? This is a sticky floor that I'm stuck in." And a lot of it, Cynthia, too, was it's a sticky floor because when you are an ambitious, successful woman that really can achieve anything she sets her mind to, and you tell yourself, "You know what? I'm not gonna drink today." And then 4 o'clock rolls around and you're like, I'm going to start tomorrow. And that tomorrow never actually happens.
right.
That's when it's like, okay, this something's wrong here. So alcohol and addiction is a sticky floor. Pretty privilege is a sticky floor. That's something I talk about in the book, how we internalize beauty standards and what we believe we need to look like, act like, be like to be successful, desirable, wanted, whatever. But those were two of the big ones that I think were really surprising, but have been very influential in my life.
Yeah, the s
Pretty
pretty
privilege, yes.
privilege syndrome. When I stumbled upon that in the book, I thought, "Wow, good for you to address that." I have contemplated how to address that many times, and I couldn't get the courage up to say it. Um, I think that there was that self-talk that you talk about throughout the book
Yeah.
of, will it seem like, "Oh, well, she thinks she's pretty because she's talking about this," right?
Hey,
But the
look, Imma
re
tell everybody I do think I'm pretty, and I can
Yeah,
tell you how it has held me back in certain aspects, and I can tell you how it has impacted decisions that I've made and how it's
right,
impacted how I step into a room,
right,
you know? And it's very interesting how our perception on beauty standards and what's expected of women really does impact us at
mm,
the youngest age possible. I've got a 10-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl, and I can already see those things kind of starting to bubble up more so in my daughter than I
right,
am in my son. And it's not because I raised them differently.
right, right. Well, and you use a lot of data and evidence in the book, which I really love and appreciate, around those exact standards around statistics of those that are considered attractive by whatever social standards, having greater access, doing better in interviews, making more money, etc. And yet it can be a sticky floor if you are using it in the wrong way, thinking putting a priority on that that's
Uh-huh.
unhealthy. right? A real quick story. I was working many, many, many years ago. I had, I'll never forget, I had this suit and it was the jacket and the pants and the skirt all matched. You could intermingle the
Yep.
pantsuit or the skirt suit, right? It's probably 30 years ago. And I remember going into my mail boss's office and wearing the skirt and the jacket and saying to him, I have this same outfit with the pants. Is that acceptable if I were to wear the pants with the jacket as a suit to work? And he said, not if you want to separate yourself from the admins.
Oh.
So I remember marching back to my cubicle at the time and thinking, oh, so if my legs are sticking out, it's professional. But if they're
Correct.
not, it's not. What a formative moment, though,
Mhm.
in
And we
terms
learn
of,
those things, and they
yes,
stick in our brains, you know? And I was even just this weekend, and it shows you how prevalent it is, right? I was at a football game for my 10-year-old talking with one of my friends, and somehow makeup, the conversation of makeup came up, and she was like, "I just hate the way it feels on my face, so, I just really don't wear it anymore, and I don't wear mascara, like, even when I'm going on a date with my husband," she's like, it's not me anymore." And I remember sitting there, this was just this weekend, y'all, so January 2026,
right,
this healed version of Erica had that sticky floor thought of, "Wow, I wish I could, like, get up on stage without makeup on." But we all know that ain't happening. That
right.
is not gonna happen,
Absolutely not.
y'all.
Right. Absolutely not.
And it's because somewhere deep in my psyche, I have this belief that I need to look a certain way, be a certain way, and act a certain way on stage.
Right.
And, I do think that people well, gosh, see, Cynthia, this is me like dismantling the sticky floor in my head real time, right? I have that deep rooted fear that people will not take me seriously if I am not presented a certain way, that if I don't
Right.
look a certain way on stage, that I will therefore look not polished, not complete, and not be the person who they are expecting on stage. And so that is
Right.
a sticky floor of mine.
So let's unpack that. I mean, that because that relates to fear of failure, it relates to
Worrying
burnout, it
about what other
relates
people
to, right,
think.
worrying about it, what other people think, is that and I know you have the SNAP method and we're going to dig into that, but before we do, um what is the wisdom to the woman listening around, and maybe it is straight into the framework, but for the woman listening that says, "Well, yeah, I wouldn't show up to work without my face on,"
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
or, I know if I dress a certain way, it's going to create positive or negative reactions, right? Um, that's kinda part of society.
Yeah.
So, I guess, when does it become a sticky floor
Mm.
versus a knowing?
Versus like a societal expectation, right? We can't
And
all
that
run
you've
around.
accepted.
Yeah, we can't all run around the corporate office with our hair never brushed and looking like we just woke up out of bed, right?
Right,
So there is that fine line of like, how do you show up, right? And so I think it does dive a little bit into the framework, but I think the difference is if you see something and you can accept it at face value, right? So, for example, if I can have this conversation with my girlfriend and recognize that she can confidently wear no makeup with anything she does, and I cannot. If I am okay with that, if I'm like, you know what, I'm good. Ain't nobody need to see me without makeup. This is me. This is how I roll. It's how I feel my best.
right.
That's not a sticky floor. But if you're sitting there next to your girlfriend and she's telling you this and you're going, wow, I wish I could do that, that's a sticky floor.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
when you do sit down, and here's where I'll kind of like pivot into the framework that you so graciously set it up for me, but it's
Yes.
called the SNAP method, right? And
Yes.
it's cute, easy little name. A lot of people think about the bend and snap from whatever that law, Legally Blonde. That's the
That's right.
movie.
Right.
It's not always easy to do, but I'll tell you what each part means and then we'll go through it, right?
Let's
So
do
the
it.
S is for stop and notice what is going on inside of your body. So what are the physical sensations, right? That is the pattern interrupt. That's why it's so important because it actually kind of stops whatever thinking cycle you're in and the spiral you might be in. Just notice, like, wow, I have a racing heart, or I have clammy hands, or my leg is bouncing up and down and I can't concentrate. Those are all signals, right? The N stands for naming your sticky floor, because when you name something, you start to take power back over it. You
Mm,
start to reclaim your agency. So if you can say, wow, I'm not feeling confident right now, or this is imposter syndrome rearing its ugly head, boom, now you've got something you can lock in on. Then you have to A, ask and answer those very deep and personal questions. And the two that I love to start with are, is this thought helpful? And is this thought true? Because so often we have those little
right.
devils that are sitting on one shoulder that's telling you a whole bunch of lies, your inner critic, whatever you want to call it, that is going to dismantle you and try to tear you down. And so those are the two questions I always start with. But that's really about peeling back the onion and getting to that root cause of, why do I think this way?
Right.
And then the P is simply a reframe. It's all about picking your pivot. What is a different choice in this moment? And so again, it sounds super easy, but if we were to walk it through with this exact example, for me, the stop notice would have been when I'm sitting there with my girlfriend and I'm having these racing thoughts that are all centered around, I could not do something like that.
Mhm.
Not. I could never, right? So then I noticed that uncomfortable feeling, and sometimes that's all it is just this feeling of uncomfortableness. Okay, I've noticed it. Then I'm able to name it. Like, wow, I'm a little bit lacking in the confidence area, right? Like, that's what it's relating to me. I don't feel confident enough walking out onto a stage or going on a date with no makeup. For me, that's like a bold move.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, we've asked, we answered, we know it's a confidence issue. I'm struggling with it. What's the pivot? Right. And then I get to choose whatever I want that pivot to be. And honestly, if I think about it, I think the pivot for me is, Erica, that's wonderful, but in your industry and in your role, it might not be for you right now.
Right.
And that's okay. Like, you don't have to solve for it. I don't have to get to the end of this snap process and suddenly be the woman who can go around the entire world with no makeup on and my hair not done.
Right.
But you can do it in little tiny increments. And I'll give you an example. And that I used to have this belief that if I were to go on stage or be taken seriously, that I had to have my hair down, it had to be nice and curled, it looking pretty much just like yours is today, right? Gorgeous, chef's kiss girl. And I mentioned this inside her collective. And one of the women, and this is why I love this community, because they hold me accountable as much as I hold them accountable. But she said to me, like, Erica, I put my hair in a ponytail all the time and I call it my power pony. And I
Oh,
was
well, there
like,
you go.
okay.
Pivot.
Like, okay, I can kinda get down with this. And so I started with a little half up, half down action, okay? I couldn't quite go all the way, but I remember being like, "Okay, this is different, this is new for me," and I did the half pony, and it was great, and, like, you can see me now, I got my hair up, I just pulled down these little tendrils, and I feel great. So
Right.
sometimes it happens in these little small baby steps, right? You don't have
Yeah.
to, like, turn around and be some magically healed person right after you do it, but
Right.
that's kind of the framework in its totality, but it applies to any of the sticky floors in any of those situations that you get into.
So for the woman listening, and I think that was such a great breakdown, and again, it's an area that we think about, maybe we don't verbalize. So I love that we covered that one, and kudos to you for taking it on and naming it and calling it out. When you think about the women in the corporate environment where you spend a lot of time, I spend a lot of time. Well, let me say it this way. What I love about your book and your framework is that sticky floors all are these sort of internal things we do to ourselves through maybe our own perceptions or how we're thinking about it, et cetera. So it has a lot to do with controlling what you can control by reframing how you see the situation. Is that an accurate
Yes.
portrayal?
So the whole premises of the book was, I was hearing all of these statistics, which are real. right? Like the research shows that it's going to take 132 years to close the pay gap, right?
Right.
We see all the stats that show that women are not in the highest levels of leadership and that we do not have gender equity in the workplace. And we know that there's a confidence gap, a leadership gap, and all of these things, right? But that wasn't true for me. I became a C-level leader. I was out earning my husband. I was killing the frickin' game. And I didn't do that because the patriarchy was dismantled. I didn't do that because gender equality was a thing. Like, I learned how to bust through all of these internal glass ceilings that I had so that I could get to that big one up at the top, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's going to take generations to change some of these systems that we have in place in the world today. And it's going to take a long time, but it doesn't have to be your reality. And I'm a big believer in like you got to play the game to win the game to
Absolutely.
change the game. And so I'm someone that is privileged enough that I just happen to, innately be super ambitious, maybe a little stubborn, right? But always forward going that I didn't let a lot of those things stop me.
Right.
And so I just thought, the premise of this book needs to be like, hey, this is the reality of the world that we live in. And this is the game we're playing, but you can still win at that game. And then, hey, guess what? Then we'll all change the game together.
I love that so much, and it's where our methodologies really interlock
Yes.
because when we wrote Now Near Next, it was not a finger wagging at society or men or what have you. It was a women are not intentional in their career planning.
Hmm.
So start working on your future today. Invest in yourself. Put those things in motion. And we cover imposter phenomenon in a chapter, but it is a chapter. It's not the central, through
Right.
line of the book. The through line is start intentionally working on your future today. And you really took that the sticky floors we create for ourselves and created, this entire book and framework around that. Um, let's talk about the SNAP method in the corporate environment. Where was a time that a sticky floor of your own design, and by the way, you and I have a very similar path. I didn't feel held back. I sort of, I don't know, elbowed my way in. Um and yet I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and there were a lot of things that I thought, "Oh, I wish I'd have done that differently, or I wish I'd have known that differently," and I sort of worked through it. Um, but we know statistically that there you and I in some ways are a bit of the minority, and not because we did it easily or without challenges along the way. What was a sticky floor for the corporate woman who's listening that you experienced, and let's you snap to walk through it.
Yeah, I think one that came to mind when you were just talking is not a chapter in the book, but I think it's one that a lot of women can resonate with, and that's not asking for help.
Mhm.
Right? I think a lot of us feel that we've gotta be able to do it all ourselves because there's already all of these stereotypes against women in positions of power.
Right.
And so we don't want to show any kind of weakness, right? And I'll speak for myself that, like, that was me. I did not want any crack in my armor to be seen because then I felt like I won't be taken seriously or I won't be given the next promotion or the raise or the opportunity or they'll realize I'm not supposed to be here at all, right?
Yes.
So there's all these things. If I ask for help, this is what the problem is. And so when you're walking through the SNAP method, it's especially with this one, it's going to be in the moment, right? When you know that you need help for whatever reason, maybe you're not sure what you're doing, maybe you need an outside perspective, maybe the load you're carrying is too heavy. And you know that, gosh, this would just be so much better if I could get someone else's help, but you don't. Or
Right.
you don't raise your hand to say that you're drowning or you're struggling and you feel that immense weight on you. That's the signal. Hello, something's going on. Pay attention. Right. And it could come in a lot of forms. I think with this one, not being able to sleep is a very, you know, common symptom of this type of stress, right? So then when you can name that, right? And naming it as I struggle to ask for help. This is something I struggle with, right? So naming that sticky floor of like, hey, this is what's holding me back. It then allows me to recognize that way faster the next time because I've
Mhm.
named it. I've claimed that power back over it. Then I got to start asking those questions. Why do I feel like I can't ask for help in this moment? Is it because I don't think I'll be taken seriously? Is it because I think that they'll finally see I'm not the chief people officer I was supposed to be? I'm not the project manager I said I was, or whatever, right? And then you got to go deep with those things. Why do I feel like if I ask for help, they'll think I'm less than?
Mhm.
And sometimes you may go back to a childhood belief where you unpack a situation where something like that did happen to you and you internalize that and you're like, okay, asking for help is bad. Or maybe if you raised your hand and you said something like, hey, I'm not understanding that concept, and then you got made fun of, right? All of those things internally teach you asking for help is bad.
Right.
And then, of course, we live in this society where women are told that we can have it all, do it all, and be it all with no playbook that matches how
Right.
society today, it's no surprise that we're all struggling with this situation. And so then you get to the P for the pivot. And the pivot for me with this one has always really been to look around. Erica, look around. Do you see other women not asking for help? And the answer is no, because I know a
Right.
lot of women ask for help, right? And then the other pivot for me that has really been helpful is to internalize it. And I look at how much joy and fulfillment I get from helping others. My pivot is, Erica, you are doing a disservice to everyone else in your life that loves you and cares about you by not asking for help.
Mm.
And so for me, that's my pivot in those scenarios, right? And that's what really resonates. And so one thing I will say about these pivots is you can't just pick one, right? You can't,
Mm.
oh, that sounds good. Like mine wasn't a nice little mantra or a story or something I can repeat, right? Like it took a lot of explanation and that's
You're right.
okay because I understand it. And then I can get to that like you're doing a disservice, Erica. And then it's like, okay, I don't want to do that. I want to be helpful.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the pivots I find helpful, and I actually learned this from my thought partner and co-author on Now Near Next, Kimberly Rath. She often would say, "If I was a man, would I do that?" And I thought, "Oh my gosh, that's so powerful." So I think about negotiating, right? So for the woman listening that is, in the middle of negotiating a new job, or I think oftentimes when women are promoted, they just assume that whatever is offered to them as a promotion is non-negotiable. And I'm
Yep.
like, you don't have to take the promotion at the title, or you can negotiate that. It doesn't mean you're gonna get it, but if you don't negotiate, you'll never know, right? And so
Correct.
this idea of, if I was a man, would I hesitate to negotiate that offer?
Hell no.
And no, right? And such a good, I mean, props to them, right? Props to the guys, because and I say that all the time, we need to steal a page out of their playbook. The other thing I love about the book and about the framework is, even though the title Glass Ceilings, Sticky Floors is really around the executive, ambitious, overextended woman, that you were and are, and that, I was and remain, it's so practical in your personal life.
Mm,
Right? So here's what struck me is toxic relationships, or
mm.
that, right? The relationship chapter, around how that can be a sticky floor, and staying in those situations. I'm flipping here quickly to the table of contents.
Well, and why you while you flip, think about it. How many ambitious, highly successful women are in these relationships and these marriages that go nowhere because we don't want to be a failure at that, right? We
Right,
don't because we're succeeding everywhere else, you know? And there are so many it doesn't the book talks a lot about abuse and things like that, but it doesn't have to be physically abusive or even emotionally abusive, right? You
right.
could just be staying in a relationship that you know is not as good as it should be, right?
Yes.
Or you could be still hanging out with a best friend who's really kind of a bitch, but she's been your friend since 6th grade, so you can't leave
Right,
her, you know? And it's
right.
like, no, we got to check ourselves, right? Like, we got to really look at the people that we're surrounding ourselves with and do they give us energy or are they always taking energy.
Yes.
And yes, that might mean that you have to have a real deep heart to heart with a partner or a spouse or a best friend that you've been with for forever. But
Yes.
once you move beyond that, right, and you recognize the freedom and just like the levity that you feel when you finally do step away from those relationships, or you put really great boundaries into place, right?
Right.
It's so freeing, and it clears up all of that mental space and that mental energy that you didn't even realize you were wasting.
Absolutely. And I love that you start with the stop and interpret how you're feeling. So I've seen other frameworks that talk about sort of stop, interrupt the thought, right? Which is also part of it. You have to acknowledge you're
Yeah.
going down this path. But what I really love is there's a palpable reaction when things are off, right?
Yes.
Where either I'm just thinking about I spent a few years in a very toxic, emotionally abusive relationship, which is hard to say as a strong, smart,
Yeah.
relatively smart, educated woman. Um, it was hard for me to admit how bad the relationship was and how toxic the relationship was. And when I was reading the framework, and of course I've done a lot of healing and a lot of
Yeah.
understanding of what it was and so on, and even why you allow yourself into those situations, I'm a fixer, right? I'm the one that
Well,
wants
I
to,
don't give
take
up.
care of everyone. I
I don't
don't
walk
give up.
away.
I'm not a quitter, not a quitter. And and then there's also the embarrassment of, well, I've been in it this long and I've sort of defended this situation. And so, that's a little embarrassing as well. But what struck me is the listen to your body and take a moment to see that visceral reaction to how that feels in those moments where you realize this isn't right. And that could be with a toxic work environment. That could be with a boss that no longer brings you no longer have joy at work. You might love your team, you might love the culture, you might love the job that you have, but if you're reporting to somebody that doesn't engage you, doesn't support you, makes you feel less than, um, every time you have a one-to-one or you get that phone call, you get that pit in your stomach, that's a signal.
And that's the thing. And the reason I start with the stop is there's a book out there, and I have to admit, I have not read it, but the title of it just does it for me. And it's The Body Keeps Score.
Oh, I love that
And
book, yes.
I haven't read it yet, so it's on my list for 2026, but I am I'm just like, "Yes, the body keeps score." Like, your body signals so much to you, but the reason I start with a stop is because we are always on the go. We've got 57 spinning plates in the air that when we have those moments where we are not comfortable and not aligned, we don't take a minute to actually pay attention to that,
Mhm.
right? We're just rushing to get it over with to get to safety, whatever that means, right?
Right,
And for example, like you brought up negotiation, that's a huge one. If you are sitting there in a meeting with your soon to be or hopeful soon to be boss or the recruiter, and your heart is palpitating and your feet are bouncing up and down and like your thoughts are racing and you want to ask for more money, but you're not sure how. And then the call wraps up and you never really got the ask out there. Like
right.
all of those signals were like red flags and flashing lights going at you. But often what happens is we hang up the call and then we're like, well, I didn't say exactly what I wanted to say, but now I'm on to the next thing and we
That's right.
don't pay attention. And they're little tiny seeds that show you what the bigger issue is, right? So, perfectionism is one of the chapters in my book. And I never thought that I was a person that struggled with perfectionism, right? Like, I am fine if the house is a little messy, my closet is what it is. And it wasn't until I was having a recording with someone else who said, I really struggle with perfectionism. I'm like, well, let's talk about it. Tell me more.
Right.
And her example, because she's a very fitness-minded person, was if I don't have 30 minutes a day to do this and then another 30 to do that, followed by a stretch, it's not worth it. I won't do it. And then I was like, oh, that kind of feels like me. And I was like, in my head, I'm having this conversation and I'm listening and I'm like, "Oh, shit.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay." And then I was able to put it all together just from, all of that where it was like now you can't quite see it here, but in my office, I also have my gym and it's on the other side. And so my husband will always text me or be like, "Hey, can I come up? I only got 15 minutes." And Cynthia, every time he would do that, I would be like, "Look at this idiot. He's only got 15. Who does he think he is?" Like, because also I used to be a personal trainer. So I know
Right.
30 minutes of activity is good. And like I have this standard built in my head. And
Yeah.
him coming up here for 15 minutes is a waste of time. Right. Then I realized at the end of the week, he was getting in an hour and a half more exercise than I was because every little bit counts.
Right.
And so
Right.
I have to share the pivot with this one because this is what always gets me is Cynthia, if you were trying to save $100 and I walked up and I gave you 20 because that's all I had, would you rip it up and throw it away and be like, sorry, it's not 100, it's not good enough? Hell no. You'd be like,
No.
"Yes, now I just need a couple more." And so
Right.
that's my pivot when I catch myself being like, "Oh, I only have 20." It's like, "Okay, Erica, quit telling yourself that lie. Let's get to it."
That's phenomenal. What a visual
I'm
story
done.
to keep in mind. And I my kids would tell you, so I might as well admit it. I am a bit of a perfectionist and quite a control freak. Both of those things. I like everything in its place, and I'm all about structure to a fault. To a fault, I've had to realize that was I think when we were chatting before we started the recording. There were a lot of things about the book as I was reading it that hit me personally, and that's why I say it. I think for the woman listening, I highly recommend this book, Glass Ceilings and Sticky Floors, because it's absolutely dead on as it relates to the things that we hold ourselves back from
Yeah.
a career perspective, right? Which means that we can control them because we have the neuroscience and we have uh, uh, the ability to change the way we think, to change the way we show up, to reprogram how it's showing up in our minds. But I think it also applies that same neuroscience, that same data and evidence, and this method. I really think is supportive in your personal situation. I was thinking about. Um, just some things going on in my personal life and how my control of they're not doing it the way I would want them to do it kind of
Mm.
thing that happens from time to time,
Uh-huh.
if I'm being honest, is, you know what? I'm having a visceral reaction because somebody else is not doing it the way I would do it. I'm speaking
Mhm.
in family situations. Um, what is that about me that feels the need that it's supposed to happen in this order or this way, right? Asking those, naming it, that's my control. That's my control issue. Asking myself the question of, does it matter? Um, is it wrong or is it just different, right? What
Yeah.
are the consequences of this? And then pivoting to I can only offer love and support,
Mm.
and there are other ways to go about certain things. Um, and I'm being a bit vague because my family listens.
Hey, I'm
They're all
listening.
going
I'm right
they're all
there with
going,
you, girl.
yeah, they're all sitting there going, "Yeah, that was mom about this,"
She
or "That
talking
was
about me.
that's my sister about that," right? But the point is that whether it's work or home life, I think this notion of really understanding how much we can hold ourselves back,
Yes.
um, and be counterproductive in terms of our ambition and our desire to get ahead and so on. What's the um when you think about the woman listening that says, "I'm not where I wanna be. I feel not completely actualized. I really wanna be the next level role," whatever that might be.
Uh.
Well, I don't know what my sticky floor is. Well, I don't know what it is that's holding me back. Where do you start?
Oh, well, first of all, I say go talk to your bestie. She'll tell you what your sticky floors are,
There
right?
you
Go
go.
talk to your partner. They will tell you what your sticky floors are. But yeah, those are two great places to start. But I do think you
Mhm.
have to be very self aware. You have to be very introspective and you have to be looking. You literally have to be looking for those physical symptoms that show up in your body. And
Mhm.
then, if you're really like, I can't think of anything, I don't know, document it, right? Like,
Yeah.
when you feel that coming up, write it down. But Cynthia, I'll tell you, I've only when I first started my podcast and I'm talking to all these women and I'm like, I'm looking for sticky floor stories, I've only ever had one woman in my life tell me she didn't have any sticky floors.
Really?
And I was like, "Well, I think you've missed the premises for the podcast." But everyone has a sticky floor, right? Like, I'm over here, I've got a book written about it. I'm not all
Right.
healed and self-actualized, right? Like, there is a chapter in my book where we talk about these sticky floors continue to bubble up. This is the
Right.
whole thing about life and learning, and different circumstances will come up. And new level, new devil, right? Like, I will never forget at one point, I was talking to one of my coaches and I was like, I don't have imposter syndrome anymore. Like, I am cured. I'm doing all these things. And she was like, well, cool, Erica. How much are you charging for your executive coaching packages right now, your one on ones? And I was like, oh, well, it's like a 3-month commitment. It's like $10,000. And she was like, why isn't it 40? And I was like, oh, I could never. Mm-mm. What do you
Yep.
think that is, Erica?
Right. Right.
Imposter syndrome. How much money do you think Mel Robbins charges for her one-on coaching? It's not 40,000, it's probably 250, okay?
Right.
So,
Right.
again, new level, new devil, like, these things never fully go away, and I
Yes.
don't say that to be like, "Oh my god, that's so depressing," but I say it because it means you're normal, right? If you're feeling these things,
Absolutely.
you're going through these things, it means you are completely normal, and every other woman that is self-aware feels the same thing too. You just get better at identifying those sticky floors and tackling them head on. And
Absolutely.
then you start to make those climbs up the corporate ladder a lot faster.
I remember when I started writing Now Near Next, I didn't tell a soul. And like you, I was still working a corporate job. And so I started getting up at 4 in the morning instead of 5 in the morning so that I could write because heaven forbid I take a moment away from my organization,
When you're
like
giving
they
60 hours a week.
yeah, like they owned my 5 AM to 7 AM, but in my mind, right? And I remembered not telling anybody because the first thought I had was, people are gonna be like, "Who does she think she is? She's an
Mhm.
author now? She thinks, she thinks she has some kind of thought leadership that people care to read?" I really and I thought, I am internalizing exactly these negative thoughts that a portion of the book serves to help every other woman unwind, right? So I think that I think it's validating to say that it never goes away, and I've never heard "new level, new devil." I think that's brilliant. So for the woman listening, whether you're already in the C-suite or you're on the grind, the reality is I still, feel these things,
Mhm.
maybe not as often, and I think I catch them a little bit sooner,
Yes.
but they happen, and, I would just offer that for the person listening, pick up a copy of Erica Rooney's book. If you are wondering if you're like, "Oh, tick that box, tick I have all that," then the practical guidance, the stories, the exercise of going through this is so powerful. And if you're a woman listening saying, I something's got me stuck. I'm not exactly sure what it is." Trust me, she goes through so many, stickiness that hold us back. I promise you, you'll figure it out. I figured out a few. Some that I've worked through for now, fortunately, and others, that were part of my history, and then others that I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I relate to that." So, I like to end every episode and by the way, Erica, I could talk to you for days
I know,
because
right?
it's like we were separated at birth by, I'm sure, a decade. Um, I like to end every episode with your wisdom and guidance of one thing that the women listening should start doing, stop doing, and continue doing.
Mm. Oh my gosh, so many things. But I think the first thing I'm gonna say for start doing is listening to those signs that your body is giving you. I don't think I was ever taught that as a child on how to
Mm,
recognize discomfort in my body,
yeah.
right? And I think that's the first thing is start recognizing those moments. And then I think the thing to stop doing is stop believing all of those thoughts in your head because those are the things that hold you back. You talked about how you thought, oh, she's an author now. Who does she think she is? My fear when I started my podcast and started my book was nobody's going to think I'm working, AKA
Mhm.
I don't deserve to be here, AKA I'm going to get fired.
Yep.
So stop letting those thoughts control your mind and just I think the continue thing is always continue going. Always
Mhm.
continue the climb. Keep trying. Like, even if you think, "Oh, I don't wanna be a C-level leader, this is a good spot for me," continue that internal growth,
Yes.
right? Continue to just read the books, take the small nuggets, put them into practice because that's the whole reason we're here, y'all, is to live life and to continue to grow. And so I think that's what I would say for the start, stop, continue, but, like, I also have, like, 8,000 other ones that I would share
Right.
if we had time.
We're gonna have to have a part 2 episode so
I
that we can
know.
keep going. Well, I'm also gonna be on Erica's, pod, so
Yes, y'all, we are
make sure you
cross podcasting.
that's right. So be sure to subscribe to Glass Ceiling Sticky Floors, the podcast, and you'll pick up the flip side of the conversation there. Erica, it has been an absolute blast and pleasure having you on and so many great nuggets. I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing and the message that you're getting out there in the world. More people need to hear this and need to get out of our own way. It doesn't mean that there aren't cultural barriers and systemic barriers and all kinds of other things. Nobody is ignoring that. But by gosh, recognizing that, let's get out of our own way.
Yeah.
Let's get out of our own heads and really pivot to something that is going to help us reach all of our aspirations and full potential. Thank you so,
Yes,
so
because it will
much.
take you from your now to your near to your next.
That's right,
You like
girl.
what I
That's
did there?
it. Just see how she promotes. We have this, there's no scarcity mentality among these
Heck
women here. It's
no.
all about abundance. It's all about
Amen.
abundance.
I
All
love it.
right, for those of you listening, if this conversation resonated with you, be sure to share it with others, share it with other women. You can reach out to Erica. All of her social handles and ways in which to get a hold of her are in the show notes. Pick up a copy of her amazing book, Glass Ceiling and Sticky Floors, wherever you buy your books. Out her podcast. I think you're going to love it, and it'll be a great yin yang or flip side of the coin to climbing the corporate ladder without breaking a heel. In the meantime, take care. You've got this. Congratulations on choosing to invest in yourself. I know your time is precious. Thank you for spending it here with me. I believe in helping you look up, step forward, and fully realizing your potential. If today's conversation resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd rate and comment on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you know someone who would benefit, please share this episode with them. Let's stay connected. Visit me at dr-cynthia.com, and you can find me on all the socials at Dr. Cynthia Bentzen-Mercer. Until next time, remember, boldly start working on your future today.